People don't like instructions. They think they're too smart for them, too strong for them, too independent to need them. But instructions, they aren't there to cage you. They're there because someone already walked through the fire and wrote down the map of survival. Ignore them and you bleed. Follow them and you live. Funny thing is, most people don't realize until it's too late that the very words they brushed off, the ones they thought were unnecessary, were the lifeline they needed when the walls closed in. Every instruction ever given has a history behind it, a scar, a moment where someone somewhere bled enough to learn the lesson the hard way. They didn't just write down rules because they were bored or wanted to control someone else. They carved them out of their own survival. Think about it. Every warning, every direction, every step mapped out was born in pain, in mistakes, in losses that someone else already endured. Instructions are not ink on paper. They are blood on stone. They are echoes of screams turned into whispers for you. Yet people treat them like suggestions, like options, like something they can follow if it feels convenient. That's the madness of it. Taking wisdom that cost someone their life and tossing it aside like trash because it doesn't fit your mood. When you see instructions, what you're really seeing is the evidence of war. Someone fought, someone fell. Someone crawled through hell just to show you where the landmines are. But people think they're clever enough to walk blindfolded through the field, whistling as if they can't possibly blow themselves up. They call it bravery. They call it freedom. They call it independence. But it's not independence when you're stepping into the same trap someone already marked with red paint. It's arrogance. And arrogance is always punished, sooner or later. Instructions are survival codes disguised as words. Every single one is a warning bell. Don't touch that flame. Don't walk down that alley. Don't open that door. You don't need to know why. You don't need the full story. You just need to listen. Because the why is already carved into someone else's bones. The price was already paid. The blood was already spilled. Ignoring it doesn't make you unique. It just makes you next. People love to say they want freedom, but they don't understand what freedom costs. Real freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about staying alive long enough to do it. And you don't stay alive by ignoring the voice that's telling you where the cliff is. You don't stay alive by throwing away the rope handed to you in the middle of the storm. Yet, so many do. They think they're too strong, too lucky, too different. They think instructions are for the weak, for the blind, for the ones who can't think for themselves. And then the trap closes, and they realize the instructions weren't weakness. They were the only shield they ever had. You see, instructions are shortcuts carved out of suffering. They cut through the confusion. They spare you the mistakes. They save you from walking the same dead end path over and over. But people don't like shortcuts that they didn't invent themselves. They don't like maps unless they drew them. So they toss the instructions aside and stumble, fall, bleed, scream, and only then whisper, "Maybe I should have listened." But by then the damage is done, the loss is permanent, and regret becomes the only companion left. The most dangerous lie people tell themselves is, "I'll be fine." That little phrase has killed more people than bullets. "I'll be fine" is what people say when they walk into storms without shelter, when they drink poison thinking they'll survive it, when they ignore instructions thinking they're immune to the consequences. And then when the house collapses, when the trap snaps shut, when the ground caves in, they finally realize they were never fine. They were warned. They were told. They just didn't listen. Instructions don't exist to control you. They exist to save you from the traps you don't see. They exist because someone already went ahead of you and saw the knife in the dark, the pit in the road, the fire waiting to burn you alive. Ignoring them is like laughing at someone who hands you armor before a battle, tossing it aside because you think you're untouchable. And then when the arrows start flying, you finally understand, but too late. Every word of warning is a gift wrapped in someone else's scars. Every instruction is a chance to skip pain, to avoid loss, to step past death itself. But people don't treat them that way. They treat them as noise, as rules meant to stifle, as obstacles in the way of their pride. And pride loves deaf ears. Pride loves blind eyes. Pride leads you to believe you're too special for disaster, too clever for traps, too unique for failure. But disaster doesn't discriminate. The trap doesn't care about your pride. And failure, it's been waiting for you to ignore the instructions. There's a strange thrill people get when they ignore directions. They call it independence. They call it courage. They even call it trusting their instincts. But deep down, it's pride dressed up as wisdom. Ignoring what's been written, what's been spoken, what's been handed to you, feels like strength in the moment. You think, "I'll figure it out my own way. I don't need someone else's path. I don't need to be told." And that thought feels empowering, doesn't it? But power without perspective is nothing more than a blindfold. You think you're leading yourself forward, but you're actually walking straight into the dark. It's funny how silence, after ignoring an instruction, feels like victory. You skip the warning, nothing happens instantly, and so you smirk and think, "See, I was right. I didn't need to listen." That silence is dangerous. It tricks you into believing there are no consequences, that you've outsmarted the very system designed to protect you. But silence isn't safety. It's delay. Consequences don't always show up at the door the second you defy them. They wait, they build, they grow. And by the time they arrive, they're too heavy to fight. Every ignored instruction is a seed planted. You might not see the roots breaking through the soil right away, but beneath the ground, it's spreading, it's digging, it's preparing to rise. And when it does, it doesn't come as something small and harmless. It comes as something towering, something unstoppable, something you can't cut down with a dull blade of excuses. By the time you face it, it's already too late. That's the cruel trick of ignoring wisdom. The price doesn't come up front. It collects interest. And when it's time to pay, it bankrupts you completely. People don't like to hear this because they love to believe they're the exception. They look at someone else's downfall and think, that won't be me. I'm smarter. I'm stronger. I'll know when to stop. But every person who's fallen thought the same thing. Every person who ignored a voice of warning believed they were untouchable until the ground cracked beneath them. That's the arrogance of ignoring instructions. It blinds you to your own weakness. It convinces you that destruction only happens to other people, never to you. And then there's the stubborn belief that ignoring instructions proves strength. People confuse rebellion with courage. They think disobedience is proof of independence. But rebellion without understanding isn't strength. It's suicide in slow motion. It's like walking into a burning building, just to prove you don't need a fire escape. For a moment, you feel bold. For a moment, you feel alive. And then the smoke fills your lungs. And suddenly, the strength you thought you had feels like chains dragging you down. Ignoring instructions doesn't just hurt you. It rewrites the future you were supposed to have. Every skipped warning closes a door you'll never get back. Maybe it's a relationship destroyed. Maybe it's an opportunity lost. Maybe it's your health burned away piece by piece. And the irony. You'll spend years repairing the damage that could have been avoided if you had simply listened for a few seconds. That's the cruelest trick. You think you're saving time, proving yourself stronger, when in reality you're signing yourself up for years of unnecessary suffering. But the heart of it all is this: ignoring instructions feels smart only because pride is loud. Pride tells you, you know better. You don't need this. You're too strong for warnings. And so you puff your chest, block out the voice, and march forward. But pride doesn't care about your survival. It only cares about feeding itself. And once it's full, it leaves you alone in the wreckage, staring at the ruins you created by refusing to listen. The saddest part is that people only start to value instructions after the fall. When the damage is done, when the trap has snapped shut, when the regret is burning holes in their chest, that's when the words come back to them. Clearer than ever, louder than ever, too late. And they whisper to themselves, if only I had listened. But that's the thing. Ignoring instructions feels smart. But it's always the dumbest gamble you'll ever make, because you're not betting with time or money. You're betting with your life. Guidance has always been mistaken for control. The moment someone hears the word instruction, their guard shoots up. They roll their eyes, they cross their arms. They start thinking, here we go again. Someone trying to chain me. Someone trying to box me in. But that's the illusion. Guidance doesn't exist to clip your wings. It exists to keep you from flying straight into a storm that will tear them off. People confuse protection with restriction, and that confusion is what kills them. They think being told, don't touch fire, is about taking away their freedom, not realizing it's about saving their hands from being burned to stumps. The irony is, The ones who scream the loudest about not needing guidance are usually the most lost. They put on a mask of strength, but deep down, they're stumbling in circles, tripping over the same mistakes, bleeding from the same wounds they swore they'd never get again. And still, they keep pushing the voice away, convincing themselves that ignoring direction makes them powerful. But tell me, what power is there in repeating failure? What strength is there in walking headfirst into a trap that could have been avoided? Guidance isn't a prison. It's a flashlight in the dark, and only fools smash it to prove they're not afraid of shadows. Every piece of guidance carries a purpose you might not understand in the moment. That's the beauty and the curse of it. You hear the words, but you don't see the danger it's trying to pull you away from. And because you don't see it, you dismiss it. You think, if I can't see the fire, then maybe it's not real. But fire doesn't disappear just because you close your eyes. The trap doesn't move just because you deny it. The pit doesn't fill itself in just because you decide you don't believe in falling. Guidance doesn't need you to see the danger. It needs you to trust that danger exists, even when your pride insists it doesn't. The trickiest part of guidance is that it often goes against desire. Nobody wants to hear, wait. Nobody wants to hear, stop. Nobody wants to hear, turn around. People want green lights, fast roads, easy paths. So when guidance tells them to slow down, to be silent, to choose the harder way, they treat it as an enemy. But guidance doesn't care about your desires. It cares about your survival. And survival isn't always about what feels good in the moment. It's about what keeps you alive for the long run. But people are so blinded by hunger, by impulse, by lust for the easy way. They'll ignore the map in their hands just to chase the glittering trap right in front of them. There's a cruel truth about guidance. If you follow it, you may never even realize what it saved you from. You won't see the bullets that missed you, the pits you didn't fall into, the storms you didn't have to fight through. And because you don't see those invisible battles, you take guidance for granted. You think, it wasn't that bad. I would have been fine anyway. But you wouldn't. You would have been destroyed, and you'll never know how close you were to ruin. That's the tragedy. People resent the very thing that spared them, because they can't measure what they were saved from. But when you ignore guidance, then you see it. You see the bullets ripping through you. You feel the fire blistering your skin. You taste the dirt at the bottom of the pit. Suddenly, you understand what those words were trying to protect you from. But by then, the damage is done. The scars are carved. The loss is permanent. And the voice you brushed aside turns into a scream in your memory, replaying over and over. You were told. You were warned. Guidance is not control. It's mercy. But mercy feels like chains to the arrogant, and chains are the last thing pride will ever accept. People would rather crawl through fire than admit they needed help. They'd rather drown than admit they needed a hand. They'd rather rot in regret than admit the instructions were right. And so they die clutching their pride, never realizing they could have lived if they'd just listened for a moment. Guidance doesn't exist to hold you down. It exists to hold you up, to keep you from being buried alive under the weight of your own stubbornness. And the only tragedy greater than ignoring it is pretending you never heard it in the first place. People think timing is just about clocks, calendars, and schedules. They think it's something mechanical, predictable. Something you can set on your phone and get an alert for when it's ready. But timing doesn't work that way. Timing is alive. It breathes, it twists, it hides, and it tests you when you least expect it. It's not a machine. It's a living force that either works with you or against you, depending on whether you respect it. And the cruelest part about timing is that it doesn't care about your impatience. It doesn't bend for your desires. It only bows to truth. People ruin themselves not because they don't get opportunities, but because they destroy them by showing up unprepared, rushing in too soon, or arriving far too late. When timing whispers wait, most can't handle it. Waiting feels like suffocation to the impatient. They confuse stillness with failure. They mistake silence for absence. They see pause as punishment. But waiting isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's sharpening the blade before the battle. It's building the foundation before the tower. It's clearing the land before planting the seed. People who despise waiting often end up planting in rocky ground, swinging dull blades, building towers that collapse with the first wind. They wanted the reward without respecting the rhythm. And so, when the moment finally came, they weren't ready to receive it. But there's another side. Those who refuse to move, even when timing screams now. They hesitate, they second guess, they let fear chain their hands to their sides. And in that hesitation, the door closes. Opportunities are living things, and living things don't wait forever. A moment arrives, offers itself to you, and if you don't step forward, it walks away. And the pain of regret is sharper than the pain of rejection. Because regret whispers endlessly. You could have, but you didn't. That whisper becomes a ghost that follows you, reminding you every single day of the moment you let slip away. Timing isn't about what you want, it's about what's required. There are seasons for planting, seasons for harvesting, seasons for silence, and seasons for war. But most people want to harvest in winter, fight in spring, rest in summer, and plant in autumn. They move against the order of things, and then they cry when nothing works out. Timing doesn't fail them. They fail timing. They ignore the rhythm. They rebel against the flow, and then they wonder why they're drowning in chaos. Timing is a law. And laws don't bend just because you're stubborn enough to resist them. The most dangerous enemy to timing is impatience. Impatience blinds you. It convinces you to grab what isn't ripe, to drink what isn't ready, to claim what isn't yours yet. And when you do, you destroy it. You crush the fruit before it sweetens. You shatter the vessel before it's formed. You sabotage the very thing that could have been your breakthrough, if only you had waited. And then you stand there blaming the world, blaming fate, blaming everyone but the truth, that you were too weak to wait for the right time. People call it bad luck, but it's not luck. It's timing, and you failed it. But hesitation is just as deadly. Some people hear the call, feel the urgency, sense the moment, and yet they shrink back. They tell themselves they're not ready. They'll try later. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. But tomorrow isn't promised, and next week may never come. Timing is ruthless. It doesn't circle back for the ones who hesitate. You either step in when the door is open, or you stay outside watching someone else walk through the chance that was meant for you. And that's the cruelty of timing. It gives no refunds, no repeats, no second drafts. The ones who master timing don't control it. They submit to it. They learn to move when it says move, and wait when it says wait. They don't argue. They don't wrestle. They don't demand. They align themselves with it, like a sailor aligning with the wind, like a dancer moving to the music. And because they align, they win. They harvest in season. They strike when the moment is sharp. They stay still when silence is required. To the outside world, it looks like luck. But luck is just another name for perfect timing. And the bitter truth is, most people lose everything not because they weren't given the chance, but because they mistreated the timing of the chance. They moved too early, or too late, or not at all. They mistook the pause for punishment and the urgency for inconvenience. Timing doesn't play favorites. It rewards the disciplined and devours the careless. And those who never learn to respect it end up living in a cycle of missed chances, wasted years, and endless regret, never realizing that their downfall wasn't fate, wasn't cruelty, wasn't bad luck. It was timing, and they never learned to listen to it. Sacrifice is a word that people love to avoid, like a bitter taste they don't want on their tongue. They want gain without giving, reward without release, victory without cost. But life doesn't trade that way. Life is a merchant, and it demands payment before it delivers. And the payment isn't always money. It's time, comfort, pride, sleep, safety, reputation. Something must bleed before something can be born. The problem is, most people want to clutch everything in their fists and still receive more. But closed hands can't receive anything. To gain what is destined for you, you have to lay something down. Sometimes the very thing you think you can't live without. But here's the trick. Sacrifice always feels bigger than it really is in the moment. Fear magnifies the cost and shrinks the reward. People say, if I let this go, I'll lose everything. But what they're really saying is, if I let this go, I'll lose the little cage I've called comfort. They cry over giving up chains, while the door to freedom is wide open. They mourn the death of their prison, as though it was their palace. They can't see that what they're holding onto is the very thing suffocating them. And because they won't let it go, they forfeit the very promise they've been begging for. Sacrifice is not loss, it's exchange. It's a trade. You let go of the lesser to take hold of the greater. But here's the cruel joke. Most people cling so hard to the lesser that they never see the greater. They'd rather hold crumbs in their hands than release them to receive a feast. They choose temporary pleasure over eternal gain, instant comfort over lasting security, applause in the moment over legacy in the future. And the world is filled with graves of people who refused to sacrifice, who spent their entire lives preserving scraps while forfeiting kingdoms. The weight of sacrifice scares people because it feels final. But what they don't realize is that refusing sacrifice is far more final. You can recover from losing sleep, losing money, even losing reputation. What you can't recover from is losing destiny. Refusing to sacrifice doesn't preserve what you love. It kills what you were meant to be. Every great story, every great victory, every great rise was carved through the blade of sacrifice. The world remembers the ones who gave something up, not the ones who clung to everything and never moved.